I'm Brian Requarth from Latitude. It's great to be here at the Finnosummit. I've got two great guests with me. We'll have them introduce themselves in a minute. First, I just want to kind of frame this session that we have. We're talking about gender lens investing. And, over the last year, I've been lucky to have some great women leaders in tech on my podcast. Hope I have you two on soon. Gina Godhill, Mariana, from Kazek, Claire Diaz-Ortiz, Lara Lemon, Antonio Rojas, Courtney McColgan, some really outstanding entrepreneurs, investors that are blazing a path for others. Now, this tech ecosystem, we know it's rigged against women, people of color. Most things are, unfortunately. The problem is systemic, multifaceted, deep, and we need to change it. At Latitude, we've focused on some diversity initiatives on OKRs, and it's a big part of what we do from founder to funder. However, things won't change overnight. So what we can do is increase our chances of success significantly now. And guess what? We have a few ideas. So today I'm honored to host this session with two outstanding professionals, Ryan Newton, Fintech founder, and Anna Raptis, venture investor. Thank you for joining me on this panel. And maybe you could kind of quickly introduce yourselves, and then we'll dive right into the questions.
Hi, well, so as Brian mentioned, my name is Anna Raptis, and I am the founder of Amplifica Capital. Amplifica was founded precisely to address this concern that we have in venture. How do we increase female participation, not only getting more funding to female investors, female founders, but getting more women to invest? So how do we actually reach out to women as investors and help women activate their capital and invest in companies that they want to see in the world? So we really believe that if you as women want to see more female founders, more women CEOs, more women on boards, then we really need to use our capital to invest in companies that look like what we want to see more of. And we're really excited to be in this space and have made 6 investments to date, all in startups with female founders or co-founders.
Congrats.
Amazing. That's awesome. Ryan, tell us more about what you're working on. It's really exciting, and let everyone know you're also a finalist here in the pitch competition, and so it's great to let's hear more about what you're building and Paisa.
Hi, I'm Ryan Newton. I'm founder of Paisa. I'm based here in Mexico City, and Paisa, we're building the financial security of remittance receivers here in Mexico City, and I'll tell you a bit more about the pitch. So stay tuned. It's in the final. And and as a female founder, the issues that we're talking about today, of course, directly affect me and many of my colleagues here in the startup community. So look forward to contributing to the conversation and helping to affect the change that we're going to talk about.
That's awesome. Well, listen, I think let's start off with just the kind of glaring question in my mind, which is, considering that less than 3% of the VC capital goes towards companies founded exclusively by women, it begs the question, why are women receiving so fewer investor dollars?
I guess
who wants to take that one?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in here. Like from my point of view, the problem is that we have a financial system that has been built in a way that excludes women. And so many women do not feel comfortable, even though they may have the same level of education, they don't feel comfortable making financial decisions because they're used to seeing that as being the role of a man. And in the financial services industry, most of the financial advisors are men over 50 who are not used to or not comfortable talking with women. So women, UBS did a study saying that states that the majority of women delegate their financial decision making to their spouses. And if you look at the data and you go from generation from between baby boomers to millennials, that's getting worse, not better. And if you combine the delegation of financial decision making to spouses and combine that with fathers and brothers and uncles and male financial advisors, it means that women are delegating 90% of the decision making to men. So we've got a lot of work to do to bring women in to be making those investment decision making. And this is precisely what we're doing at Amplifica, looking at designing investment products that are more attractive to women so that we can bring women in as investors, because women are funds that have women as partners make a much greater percentage of their investments, 2 to 3 times more, into female founders.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan, what you're on the receiving end of this as a founder. You're out there pitching. Fortunately, you're starting to get some good traction with your company, which is a strong sign. And it's hard for everybody to raise capital, but particularly women. Given and the numbers, the data kind of shows that. So how do you, in your mind, how do we get more investor dollars for women?
Right. Yeah, so I think the stat is 3% of VC dollars go to women-founded CEOs, or companies. So starting with that kind of stat, you'd say, why would I even try? But I think it's something that we really need to move. And I think there's a lot of reasons. I mean, at first I want to just kind of tackle some misconceptions, because a lot of people say, well, there's just not enough women starting companies. That's why it's less funding. It's just a proportional thing. And it's not true. There's actually the number of women-owned companies is increasing really rapidly. And the percentages in Mexico, for example, I think are around 35% of companies are founded by women. So we're there and we're founding companies. So that's not the issue. And then you look at the data showing there's a lot saying that, women founded startups actually perform much better, have higher ROI, are exiting faster. And so you think, okay, we have women founded companies, they're performing better. So why are the dollars so much lower? And I think there's a lot, and Anna can speak much more to the LP side, which is one super important issue. And then on the other side, I think as founders, there's bias in the industry that you see in any industry, really, when you think about it. So, for example, in pitching processes, right? And there's been studies, like blind studies, that show if you don't actually know the gender, you see it on paper, and you change the voice, it's pretty much the same. And you see this, there's been ways to correct this in auditions for symphonies, for example, where they do blind auditions, or, making resumes. And we're trying now, don't ever ask for a picture or marital status or any of that, right? So it shouldn't be a part of it. So I think you see the bias, you see some of the networks, and I think you'll speak to this a bit, Brian, of like begets like. You kind of you invest in what you know, and the whole networks are all kind of the same people and they revolve around. So we need to expand those networks, bring more women in, provide more support networks, so we're all in those same networks. So yeah, those are a few of the things. I think we're setting out with a bit of a disadvantage, but I think there's a lot more awareness now, and work that Anna and you guys are doing at Latitude is helping a lot.
Yeah, last cohort we had, to encourage more women to apply. Women were free in our last cohort. It stimulated a lot of interest and got people talking. And they're small initiatives, but hopefully they add up. Speaking about the bias topic, I think about my own personal biases. When I was starting in Colombia, I remember I really probably overvalued people that spoke really good English when I was living in Colombia, and despite not even being a requirement, building a business in Colombia, everyone speaks Spanish, but it was a natural inclination for me to think someone was smarter because they sounded like me. And I think that that's just an illustration of not having the awareness of those biases, put restrictions on us. And so it's also just coming to grips with that and being open about that might be a reality and not being defensive about it. On the investor side, there's been some gains that we've seen, some improvements over the last 5 or 10 years, but still, fewer than 13% of VC investors are women. So how can we get more women in venture capital? I think, first of all, Anna, it's great that you're, spearheading that, and you're raising capital. You're already investing in companies. We need more stories like yours. That's something critical. When we look at the U.S., there's been a handful of breakout investors. Eileen Lee comes to mind. There's a handful of others, from top firms that have been built, but it's taken a long time. And so how are we able to do that in Latin America? How can we accelerate that, I guess globally, but specifically since we're more focused on Latin America? What are some thoughts around that? And what can we do to kind of get behind that and accelerate that, because waiting for 10 years or 15 years to have a partner join a firm and then work their way up and then spin off like Eileen did, that's great, but that takes decades. And so we need to shorten the arrival there. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on some ideas.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Brian. I mean, I think initiatives like the ones you're looking to launch at Latitude in terms of supporting emerging managers are really, really important. In the US, you see many emerging manager programs, and you see support from both institutions and corporates and private investors for first-time fund managers, emerging managers, diverse managers, which is something you still don't see here in Latin America. You don't see, the development funds being able to invest in small funds, which is normally the size of a first-time fund manager. I'm really proud of the 500 story in Latin America. They've done an amazing job and show, the importance of supporting and developing new funds and emerging fund managers. And I use the example of 500 because their first fund was $3.5 million. Their second fund was around 5 million. And their most recent fund they've raised is 17 million, where they've been able to bring in institutional investors. But if they didn't have investors in that first fund, when they had not managed a fund before, they didn't have a track record, then they never would have got to that third fund. So we really need a lot more support for fund managers starting out that may come from a different industry. They're going to have different experience. They definitely don't come from KKR or Sequoia, because we don't have people in Latin America with that kind of experience. So we need to look at how we can leapfrog using the examples of best practices and successful case studies from the US, and do something similar to take a bet on new managers, so that we have a lot more funds being created by different kind of people, women and people from different kinds of backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if I reflect on my, during my time as CEO of Viva Real, we had our management team was 50% women, 50% men. It was a pretty balanced, our senior management team. And I remember, as a CEO, there was a moment where I had a discussion with my team, and we talked about the idea of instituting paternity leave inside the company, and how important that would be to extend out, because, if it falls on the mom to run the household, take care of the kids, and then work at the same time, there's definitely limitations in terms of professional development, and that's so I think there's a collective of small efforts, even something like that inside startups, that creates more awareness and better understanding, and then more flexibility. So I guess this is also a call to men that we need to be allies in this, and it's not women's responsibility to figure out the way and it's not really anyone's particular responsibility. It's a collective responsibility. So how can we create more allies for this, across the board? And if you were to boil it down to one thing, I liked Claire Diaz-Ortiz's article in TechCrunch recently, where she wrote, I think the title of the article is "One Change That Can Fix the VC Funding Crisis for Women Founders." If you were to boil down one thing into a balsamic reduction sauce, what would be that one thing that can really move the needle for women founders and funders?
Well, I'll let you speak. I think I'll let you speak to the article, because I think that's more in what you're doing. It's a piece that I'm more on the receiving end in terms of the LP side. I think though, I have an investor who said to me, she made a very good piece of advice, and she said, cultivate your angel network, because I'm on the angel stage right now, of women, because it's a snowball effect, right? Once you really bring on true believers, women who are really going to introduce you, who are going to be, cheering you on along the way, that's just going to unlock more and more, then getting to the point of the Amplificas and the other, who are now the LPs, who will start paying attention, who will see how you've come along. because I think the hardest part, at least, and this, I'm living it right now. So for anyone else experiencing it, just saying, who's that first one? Who's the first thing that's going to tip you over the edge and get the ball rolling? And it's quite daunting. And so I think it's just really getting a good set of believers and other women who've either been through it or who are doing angel investing, who can really help you get over that edge, I think can be really important. So it can be fellow founders. There's been a lot of movement now of founders helping founders. Maybe they're 2 stages along. So I think it's a way we can give back and really ensure that we're giving that mentorship and doing all those things that we wish we had, or, asking those questions. So I think one thing on my end is cultivating those angels who can then get that pipeline to get to the other funds, who will then have all these LPs at that point.
I think it's a great point. And I think, you take a small check from someone like Lori from Kavak, or Courtney, from Runa. And these are highly skilled operators that have, they've gone from 0 to 1. They're now in this kind of accelerated growth phase. And so there's a lot of insight, and not only insight, but it also lends additional credibility. It's a strong signal. I mean, Lori's sitting on top of a pretty enormous, world-class company that, they built from scratch in a matter of 5 years,
Right.
That Kavak management team. So the amount of lessons that she's had on her journey, and I shared a panel with her last week. I mean, wealth of knowledge, right? And so for you to be able to pick the phone up and say, hey, Courtney, tell me what it was like, in this situation. And then the mentality of trying to pull people forward and elevate the next generation, that becomes a virtuous cycle. So I couldn't agree more with you on that.
Yeah, just one just a small comment. Yeah, you unlock the funding part, but also, like you said, the support, the network, the technical assistance, all of those pieces that are a little bit, you're in the dark in many ways. And so just making introductions. And so it becomes a very, very, viable relationship, and helps move women along. And I think so it tackles a lot of the problems that we're seeing in the ecosystem.
Yeah,
that's great.
I 100% agree with you, Ryan. I mean, I've found the same thing in the building of Amplifica. The support that I've had from other fund managers in Mexico, just to pick up a couple, Santiago Zavala and the whole team at 500 have supported us in so many ways. The same for the whole team at Angel Ventures, Hernan and Camilo and Fabian and so many others on the team support us, in the structuring, in the operations, in best practices. And the same thing with founders. I mean, that has been really, really important for us. The founders that we have, men and women, the founders from Corner Shop, from Kavak, from Troca, from others, having those people as recognizing that we have challenges in the industry and we want to make changes, and supporting the fund by investing has been really, really important to us. And when you talk about women, it's really been interesting because a lot of the women who are trailblazing in getting more women on boards in Mexico and other parts of Latin America, they've been the first investors in the fund. And it's great to see that kind of that solidarity and them all kind of supporting this effort. So if I see one key thing, it's supporting more women to be investors, women as fund managers, women as partners in funds, women angels, helping them to write their first check. I think that's really key.
I think the important distinction to make here also is that this is not charity work, right? Women have performed extremely well in that role as operators, and if you kind of look at some of the data to back that up, and unfortunately we have a limited time here, but there's some really interesting data that supports the thesis that women are a smart place to put your money. And so maybe you could speak to that a little bit. I know that you're probably, both of you are familiar with those numbers because one, you're running a fund, Anna, and then Ryan, you're building a company. So it behooves you to know these things because not everyone knows that, right? This is not about creating a movement where we're like, oh, let's help out women, poor women. It's actually smart business, right? So that should get people moving.
And I think what you're saying, Brian, that's key. I was a consultant with Women's World Banking for almost 9 years and was looking at these issues and convincing CEOs around the world to invest in women, not because it was actually a smart business case, not because of charity. And I think if you invest in women, it's a domino effect. You invest in LPs who invest in women founders, who invest in women diversity in their teams, who then invest in women as clients. And you look at financial inclusion. If we're talking about fintech, if we're just going to look at one industry, fintech, women in Mexico, for example, are more financially excluded than men. Women, in my case, 70% receive remittances. Women are making many financial decisions at the household level and the business level, and they're starting the majority of the small businesses, but they're not growing them because of access to finance and many other reasons. And so, you see that domino effect. We're actually going to not only have higher return on our businesses, but actually serve the people that we're setting out to serve and solve a lot of these financial access issues that fintech set out to solve. So it really, you see it at all levels, and you create that business case among the entire funnel or stages of the fintechs.
Yeah, I think you've made, Ryan, spoke to some of the data that we've seen before, but there are studies that have been produced by McKinsey, BCG, Korn Ferry, IFC, World Bank, all demonstrating that it's diverse teams that outperform, on return on equity, on exits, on speed of exits. So the business case is very, very strong. What's lacking somewhat is the visibility, and I think that's the job of all of us in this ecosystem to highlight the success of female entrepreneurs, to share the podium and share the success so that people understand that not only does the data say that investing in women is good business, but they see these women and they identify them, and so that really can start to move the needle.
Yeah,
it's funny.
You aren't what you.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's like saying you can't be what you can't see, right? So it's
that's right. That's
just bringing it forward and talking about it. Yeah.
100%. And when I started, Latitude, it was funny because I got together with Gina, who's my co-founder, who's a world-class operator. She scaled Duolingo from 3 to 300 million users globally. And when we thought about forming our partnership, it was funny because she said she laid out the law out for me. She said there's a couple things that are absolutely critical if we're going to build something together, and one of them was we will invest and support women founders, and that's a non-negotiable item. Fortunately, it's something that I have a consciousness about. I think is important. And my other co-founder Yuri, he ran an engineering team that had over 35% of the engineers and product folks on his team were women, which is much higher than the kind of the global average. So these things have to be intentional. And going back to it, they're smart business concepts. So to close out, since we have 3 minutes, and speaking of women in tech, Ryan's got a presentation to make shortly. So I don't want to keep you because you've got people waiting for you. But any last closing thoughts that you want to share?
I just want to reiterate what Ryan said. You can't be what you can't see. So seeing women as successful entrepreneurs, as successful investors is really, really important. And we need men and women to support these efforts to make the change, because there's a huge amount of change we need to make together.
Right. And I agree. I would just say to be very deliberate and to be open about it and make it part of your culture, that it's not just about just doing one thing or just doing another, but really mainstreaming into your culture so it becomes a part of what you do, and really being very vocal about that. So I think I agree also with what Anna said, and thank you to Finnosummit, who's also been very deliberate about its presence of women in this conference. So thank you to Finnosummit. Awesome.
Well, great. It's great to be connected with you, and keep doing the great work that you're doing. I admire both of you and what you've done so far, and very excited to see where it all goes, because there's just a world of opportunity in front of both of you, and so I'm excited to be part of that. So thanks a lot to Finnosummit, and I think we'll sign off here so you can get to your pitch.
Thank you. And thanks, Brian, and for the whole Latitude community.